I want to go straight to Tom Costello, our aviation correspondent. And Tom, that sounds like pretty big news to me, what he just reported, that the UK has a pretty aggressive approach to this right now. Just happened.
We have an avalanche now of countries around the world grounding this plane, and this one is a very big announcement. The British Aviation Authority grounding the 737 MAX. They follow Australia doing the same thing, China yesterday, Indonesia, and a handful of other countries, plus about 24 airliners. So we now count, before the UK announcement, we had 40% of the world's 737 MAXs were grounded because the world is awaiting details on the Ethiopian plane crash and the black box data to find out whether there's any causality there, any common thread between what happened in Ethiopia and what happened in Indonesia last October when another plane went down. Another brand new 737 MAX went down, a MAX 8. And so without that information right now, many of the world's airlines and now regulators are saying we simply do not have enough data to have confidence in this plane. However, the FAA is not grounding the plane. The FAA has said it has confidence right now in the plane and no data to suggest that it should ground it. Boeing insists the plane is safe. And Chris, we need to make the point. Every airliner in the United States and Canada that flies this plane, American, Southwest, United flies the MAX 8, Air Canada, a whole bunch of Canadian airliners, they all are standing by the plane, insisting that the plane is safe and that they've not had any issues. However, one of the world's biggest flight attendants union with 50,000 members is calling for a very aggressive and assertive stance on the part of the FAA. Find out what's wrong with this plane now, if anything, so that it can be sure that its flight attendants and passengers are safe. By the way, Senators Feinstein and Blumenthal also calling on the FAA to ground the fleet.
Yeah, so that was exactly where I was going, because you said, you know, what the FAA is saying is that they don't have the data to support it. People who are concerned about this are saying, what more data do you need? Then we have two crashes where everybody was killed within a very short period of time on this same plane. And then you have this letter from Dianne Feinstein and Richard Blumenthal. They want at least a temporary grounding until at least the initial investigation, these black boxes, which it'll take a couple of days, gives investigators some more clues about what's happening. How much pressure is building, including with what the UK has just done on the FAA right now?
I think the political pressure is mounting and fast. And here's when you've got China yesterday having grounded the plane. That was one thing, and Indonesia. But then Australia with an NTSB that is very similar instruction and in terms of mission as the American NTSB, and now the British Civil Aviation Board. These are among the most respected aviation regulators and transportation safety boards in the world, all of them coming down on this and saying, we don't have enough data to be confident and comfortable, and we don't want to take the risk that another plane might crash. But let me underscore yet again, we do not know what caused this Ethiopian plane to crash. We do not know whether it's pilot error. By the way, one of the pilots had only 200 hours in the cockpit. That's hardly anything at all. We don't know whether there's an engine problem, whether there was some sort of an electrical problem, hydraulic. I mean, the long list includes just about everything at this point. So it's just a simple fact that many of the world's regulators are not comfortable right now with the unknowns.
So again, the big headline, the UK Civil Aviation Authority saying that they are going to stop any of the commercial flights either into, out of, or over UK airspace. Let's see what the FAA has to do today, and I know you'll stay on top of it.
Or over, you just said it, or over UK airspace. That means if you're going from Belgium to Ireland, you can't fly in a 737 MAX 8 over UK airspace.
And would you? Is that the kind of route that might fly that plane?
Potentially, sure. It's a short-haul flight. I mean, I don't know the carrier. I just threw that up hypothetically. But absolutely, in Europe, absolutely, that's a short-haul flight. But can I just make one last point?
Sure.
You know, I talk to a lot of pilots who say we believe in data. We believe in facts. We want facts to decide this. However, I've talked to quite a few pilots who've said, you know, there are enough unknowns at this point. I may not really feel comfortable right now flying a 737 MAX.
I had two aviation experts on the shows that I anchored yesterday and asked both of them point blank, would you get on one of these planes right now? And they both said no. So let's see what the FAA does. Tom Costello, thank you for that.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.